Hi there, and welcome back to the podcast. And wherever you may find yourself today, I hope you are having a wonderful day. I'm so thankful and excited to introduce the guest for today, and that's Dustin Riedesel. To me, he's Dusty, and I've known Dusty since 2005. And Dusty and I played basketball together in college. And he's just one of those friends who I only get to talk to probably once or twice a year, but the opportunities that I do get to talk to him is just wonderful. And so I really appreciate him very much. And when I thought about talking about the topic of writing, the first person that came to mind was Dusty. And one of the first memories I have of Dusty is him writing, and that I mean that with utmost sincerity. When we were in college, I remember going up to Dusty's room, and his roommate Big Phil was in there, and I walked in, and Dusty was on his laptop and he was writing. So when I thought about writing and I thought about, I would love to just discuss it because I know so little about it. And it's something that I've tried to do before, but failed to do. And so I was like, I would love to just conversate about that with somebody who knows. And so not only is writing something that I associate to Dusty from my friendship and my experience knowing him, but he's authored the book Cheeto Dust. And recently he authored a book on marathon running called Looks Like We're Running, an amateur's companion to becoming a marathoner. And I didn't realize he had authored that until we had our conversation. And I've been listening to the audiobook on Spotify, and I'm getting close to about 50% of the way through. And I'm not a runner in terms of I don't do that. I'll run just for the sake of, trying to be able to make sure I can still, run away from a bear. I guess you could say that. That's a bit absurd. But the point is that it is a really fun book to listen to. And I see Dusty and I see who he is as a person and I see just what I know of him. It just comes through in his writing. And it's really special to listen to and to see that. So, he is somebody who not only do I associate to writing, but he's someone who is a published author and knows exactly what he's doing as well. Now, he's obviously very humble about that. He would say that there's much to learn, and I'm sure there is, but he knows infinitely more than I do about the topic. And I know that it'll be something that anybody else is going to benefit from this conversation. And so, when it comes to words, Dusty is gifted with them, whether that's speaking words or whether that's writing words. And I can tell you when it comes to speaking words, when it comes to the verbal joust, I have yet to see Dusty unhorsed as it is. So I think that, you'll have to forgive the analogy, but I know for a fact that that will be appreciated by some. This was a conversation where I was able to just enjoy listening. I didn't have to talk a lot because there was so much more for me to learn than there was for me to talk about or to share in response. And so, in conclusion, I just want to just reiterate this one point, and that is that this conversation with Dusty, the pleasure is absolutely and unequivocally mine. And it probably sounds to a stranger would sound absurd. Dusty is one of the most notorious stealers of the pleasure I've ever known in my life. A man who will utilize the English language to depths I've never fathomed to be able to turn it around and to say, no, 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 the pleasure's not yours, but the pleasure is mine. But Dusty can't do that right now because he's not here. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to just simply say the pleasure was completely mine. So without further ado, enjoy the conversation with Dusty, and I hope you have a great day. What is your worldview? How does that worldview shape and form your understanding of meaning? In this podcast, we discuss various matters of interest and value. But in the end, we want to know the deeper meaning of these matters and how they apply to the world around us and to ourselves. My name's Jonathan. Join me as I search out deeper meaning and understanding into the matters at hand. Last time we saw each other, you just finished up the marathon in Indy, right? It was the full marathon.
That's right. Yeah.
And since then have you done any more marathons specifically? You got anything else on the list?
No, in fact, so I write a letter for both my children, for their birthday. I write them a letter, and the idea is that they will be compiled, and I'll give them to them when they're older. And it kind of like captures like the last year of their life, but gives them insight into me. Like one of the promises I wanted to make to my kids is that they would know who I am, the good and the bad. I don't want to be like an idea of a father. And I think seeing some of that humanity, it's easier for me to reach in the writing. But the reason I bring that up is in this last letter to Walter, his birthday is in like less than 2 weeks. So I just finished that letter. And I was telling him about running the Grand Canyon and the idea of Misogi, and how like getting that one really difficult effort, how it helps you find the boundaries of your life, which is really beneficial for like finding your own identity.
Mhm.
And as I was writing about it, I was thinking about how did I even get here to this point that I'm running across the Grand Canyon twice? And I realized that for me, for about 5 years, the marathon had been my Misogi. Because, like, look, just getting through a marathon, I believe that almost anybody can do that with just like a few months of work, you know? But to set a specific time, which was for me that sub 4 hour goal, I failed it 3 times, then got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that put a big gap between my third and fourth effort. And then once I got it on that fourth effort in Indy that you're referencing, it was like I could let go of it, you know? And I'm sure I'll run another marathon. It's I find the whole process insanely rewarding. Um Partially even more so because I took the time to write a book about the effort of becoming a marathoner. And so I feel like I've created a bond with that particular type of race and the lead up into it. So it'll probably happen again. But I don't necessarily think marathon running is like the best choice for your physical fitness. You know, I find if I just care about like looking good and feeling good, then I can do a lot more by setting up more like CrossFit high rock style metcons a couple times a week to really like maximize my effort, use a full range of motion instead of just the running motion, and then sprinkle in like 15 to 20 miles of running a week just to like keep the lungs good, keep the motion good. And I do think running is just pivotal to, you know, your physical ability. It's like something you never really want to lose. So I have put marathons on the back burner, and when I get into running, it's more about preparing for these big trail races. Like I want to go somewhere, and not even like a trail race is the wrong thing. It's like a social outing where I get some buddies and we find like a cool trail somewhere in the world, and we're gonna go there and we're gonna take it down. And it doesn't matter if it takes all day. You know, we're not trying to set a time record here. We're trying to like see some of the glory of the world, test ourselves physically, and bond socially through the shared suffering of the effort, and come out of it feeling like we really achieved something. So that's where the running effort has gone, and the marathon was an excellent tool to make me capable of that from where I've been. But, you know, long answer to no.
Oh, well, I mean, the idea of taking something like that people have a tendency to get lost in the sauce on the race component of it, especially when in the grand scheme, you're not really competitive. It's just more like that individual competitive component. To see how you
Hmm.
talked about balancing the gap between the sharpening of the personal goal and preparation with the emphasis on just the communal building of that. Because I mean, I've been talking to you and Matt about that rim to rim to rim experience and how it was far less about the race itself and so much more about the community component of it for you guys. Um,
Hmm.
from the outside looking in, I appreciated that kind of how you guys were able to build that and balance both.
Yeah, I think there's something that happens to like men our age. And look, I mean, I feel like this is a large portion of what your podcast is about. Like you live a large portion of your life being told the things that matter, you know, and it's school or it's your sports team or it becomes your job and they're just like ideas that were given to you. And once you gain enough proficiency in life and enough experience with the ups and downs, I think what creeps in is almost a little bit of nihilism. It's like, I don't know, does any of this stuff really matter? And what you find so this comes from, I'm a huge comic book fan. And one of my favorite comic book runs ever is by an author called Jonathan Hickman, and he wrote on the Fantastic Four. He does a lot of great independent comics, stories people wouldn't have heard of, but he got famous from his work on Fantastic Four and the Avengers. But when he was doing Fantastic Four, he put a lot of focus on Reed Richards, the world's smartest man. And Reed Richards feels the burden of his intelligence, that he like owes something to the world. And so anyways, he's in like this giant combat with like some sort of space gods. The details are unimportant. And the space gods are like demeaning his existence. It's like you're just men, you have no meaning. And he says, "No, we're men. We decide our meaning." And I think that's what people about our age start to figure out. It's like it is the burden of my life is to decide what matters and make the most of it. And so what me and Matt, our mutual friend, what we had realized was that like at this age we're pulled by so many responsibilities. Like I do need to stay in shape. I am not being as good of a friend as I could be to people because I'm putting a lot more in the dad bucket and the marital bucket, which leads me to putting a lot in the work bucket because I'm burdened with the task of provision. And and so we're like, well, how can we start to overlap some of these things so that it makes sense? Like, I want to see the world. I want to go to cool places. I do want to be physically fit. I want to know that I'm strong, not just in like a gym way, look good in pictures way, but in a way that I'm like confident in my body. And that becomes more important with every year as you start to feel it fading on you, particularly, I think, for guys like us who are used to being like athletes. It's like, oh man, I go into these rec basketball leagues. It's like, I don't got it the way I used to have it. So it's like maintaining that confidence in your own body is important. And then like those those friendships, they tend to become more just like ships in the night, just transactional, somebody to pass the time with while you're waiting for your kids' practice to get over, and
Interesting.
we wanted more depth in that. And so, we started a men's group, and then we decided that in that group we wanted to tackle some difficult things. And that started with the marathon that led to the Grand Canyon, and now we've got plans beyond that. Uh and we've been able to invite other guys into it. And we have been, I don't even know if we're surprised, but we are very pleased with the amount of tissue that going through a hard effort like that creates. Because it's not just like you all show up on the day and you give it a shot. Like, it's hard enough that you prepare together for months and you all get there and you're a little nervous about, like, are we going to be able to conquer this goal together? And then when you get on the other side of it, it's almost immaterial, like if you all made it or not. But like you all gave it your best effort and you were all pulling for each other. And so you kind of create this this abstract goal. You put a lot of your focus into it, and that's what gives it meaning. And because you've shared it with others, the meaning is amplified. And we have found that like trying to pick that Misogi idea, that one thing a year that is really tough to do and do it in community, has been awesome. And I know a lot of guys my age who, they could count their close male friends on one hand. And, I'm sending out emails for next year's trip, and, there's like I'm pushing 15, 20 bodies. And I haven't invited all the people I want to invite because like the details aren't locked in yet. But it's been really good to help me maintain fellowship in a way that I used to feel when I was a college athlete. I get I get a piece of it now by trying to do these communal physical efforts that for us happens to be trail running at the time, but it could be a lot of things.
Yeah, there's so I mean, as you talk through those things, there's so many nuances to society, culture, community, and just there's so many different veins that I would
A lot of
Absolutely,
rabbit trails.
love to go down so much. But there's so what I'm trying to say is there's so much substance in what you just said. And so I love to see that for you and Matt, obviously 2 of my close friends. I love that for you guys. It's not a surprise from a leadership perspective, not at all surprised by you guys, you know, not only doing that yourselves, but binding communities together in that way. That's absolutely not a surprise at all. But it's wonderful. But let me kind of the topic of the day is writing, right? You've already hinted at it
Mhm.
in the writing that you're doing for your kids, the writing that you did for the book leading up to your marathon. And I know there's a couple other things that we could touch on later on, but what I kind of wanted to start with was just a brief, and you can take this as far down the rabbit hole as you wish, but just kind of like, I remember seeing you in college. I remember walking into your room one time, and I think Phil was over there on the left, and I looked over, and you were just writing at your laptop. And I literally remember the moment in time right now, when I
Mm.
walked up on trustees and saw you in your room, and it for some reason popped into my head as I was thinking about talking to you about this. And so when it came to writing, as long as I've known you, you've done it and had a knack for it. And so is that something that developed over time for you? Is that a specific thing that you just kind of realized when you were young? Was it just kind of a progression? Just kind of give me your just brief introduction as to where writing came from for you.
Yeah, yeah, I've grappled a couple times to try to pinpoint a beginning, but, there's not really. It's like if I try to remember, like, when did I first love basketball, like, I don't know, It just like I did, and it feels like I always have. Uh, I was homeschooled until 8th grade, and so, I think that led to a lot of well, I know it led to a lot of isolated time, a lot of one-on-one time. And it really developed a love for reading more than anything else. I remember my older brother, when I was 7, he got the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He would have been 10, and he was just loving it. And because I wanted to do everything he did, I started reading The Hobbit. And so, I look at my own kids now. My son turns 7 this coming week, and it's like, that is a big lift for a 7-year-old. I didn't know better. I wanted to know what he knew. And so I was reading those books then, and that kinda got me into fantasy. I came to love comic books, and I think the love for reading turned into a love for story. I feel very similarly about movies, and, I've I think that if it comes down to, like, citing movies and knowing about them, and same with a lot of books, like, I have put more mental focus into storytelling than most people have just for as a consumer. So it starts there. And then I always had a little bit of a talent for vocabulary. Not anything that would like wow anyone, but like I tested well on it, right? And and so I think those things kind of merge. Like newspaper in high school didn't feel the same as other schoolwork. It felt fun. I got excited about like writing my articles and knowing that people would read it. Uh, and yeah, I think some of that just crept in to the point that when I was graduating college, I told people back then that like I mean, in my young 20s, I would tell people I was working on a book, and I kind of was. I just didn't know what that meant then. I was writing things, but I didn't have the capability or the consistency to build it into anything longer, coherent. So then throughout the 20s, like I had a couple different blogs for a while. I wrote for some independent websites while I was working sales jobs that would pay me like $20 an article just to write about like current events. Like, hey, 35 new words were added to the dictionary. Here's an article where I use all 35 words in telling you a story. Like silly stuff like this. And I just liked it. Uh the the belief that I could actually write a good book probably didn't happen until maybe the last 7, 8 years.
Interesting.
I wrote my first book while I had started it barely before I got diagnosed with leukemia when I was 30. I used a lot of that time while I was going through chemo to write on it. And I've I have considered trying to like erase all ability to get that first book because though it has some entertaining stories and there are glimpses of promise in it, I'm mostly just like when I pick it up, I read bits of it. I'm like, man, I did not know what I was doing. You know, like my
Is that
and
you being your own worst critic, or is that genuinely?
it's a bit of both. I think anybody who is actually because there's like a lot of things, there's two portions of it, right? Like there's having a talent and there's being a professional. And I'm still in the hobby category. I'm making very intentional moves now, including the way I'm approaching my current job and like a planned sabbatical. I'm making very intentional moves to pivot into being a professional writer. But when you're just like when you I'll compare it to basketball, right? It's like when we were playing every day in college, you took for granted how easy everything came to you. Like you walk in the gym and like your shot was there, your handles felt normal because you were doing it every day consistently and practicing on it. And now when I play rec basketball, those like I'll go months in between leagues. It takes me like several weeks before like the dribbling feels normal, the shot feels like it's coming out of my hand comfortably. And so I think when you look at the writing, it's fairly similar. Like there is an amount of output you need to create to find a rhythm and recognize your own mind's traps and the way it feeds you thoughts so that you can do those cleanly and simply in a way that is cohesive. And the longer the work, the more difficult that is to hold it all together into something that feels like one piece. Like you want to create integrity in the thing so that a person who gets lost there comes out on the other side and retains the whole thing. And if you're jumping around or you're scatterbrained or your sentences are too long or too compounded, um, a person comes out of it and they're like, "What did I just read?" That sensation you have where like you're reading a book and you'll realize you just read 2 pages and have no idea what happened there.
Yeah.
Like oftentimes that can be we criticize ourselves as a reader for being distracted. But oftentimes those things where you lose attention, the writer looks at that and says, like, I lost you because like I didn't hold you to the promises I made in the preceding paragraphs and chapters. Like, so to me, there is a lot that I have learned that I think I did much better in Looks Like We're Running, the book about becoming a marathoner. That to me, I know is a good book. Like it is solid. It pays off on what it promises to deliver to you. And when I go back to Cheeto Dust, the first book, I'm like, yeah, there's glimpses. Like you can see a good writer in there, but there's a lot that does not pay off. And also, I was just not the man I am today. And I think it's the critic part of me. It is hard for me to hang out with that guy in the same way. So it's like I appreciate who he was and was trying to be, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't love this stuff.
So, how much of writing, in your opinion, because one of the things you referenced there was just the learning that took place.
Hmm.
How much of writing is learning versus art? And just kind of like a natural, like, and a brief example is I could be taught to paint, right? I could be taught
Yep.
the fundamentals of painting, but I will never be able to paint Mona Lisa or the Sistine Chapel, no matter how hard I try. So, what would you kind of think about that from a writing perspective?
Well, I would say this: like, you may not be able to paint the Mona Lisa or the Sistine Chapel, but you could paint something great. You could paint a John Ensign, and like, but the thing is, you don't know what that is yet. And I guess that's what I'm saying about, like, the cultivation. So I would quibble with the how much of it is art versus, like, skill or, something you practice. The art is the skill. Like, it is my belief that most things can be art. Like, art is the practice of cultivating an idea, trying to bring it to life, making a lot of tough decisions in the process of bringing it into its final form, and learning to live with the results of the final form that you have created. You The reason we think of art and science differently is because art does not achieve perfection. And so you might talk about like a famous piece like a Mona Lisa, and people are like, well, yeah, it's perfect. And yet there's some people that just don't like it. It's unimpressive. It's small. And, I don't know what it's trying to say. Right? And that's fine. But the point is that like somebody had a vision and they got it out there. And so when it comes to writing, yes, the skills of it, like the grammar, the diction, the vocabulary, um, playing with plot and character development and where you put your red herrings versus your true evidence and your final payoffs. Like that is all skill that I think almost anybody could perfect, right? Like uh I mean, AI is gonna do it, right? Machines are gonna do it. But I don't believe that is even the point. I think 95% of the writing, the important part of it, that's too high. Let's dial it down to 70. I think 70% of the important part of the art is what's inside of anybody. It's like, do you have a story to tell? Do you have something worth sharing? And it's my experience that everyone does. And the skill part, the other 30% is learning how to capture that in a way that is fascinating to others. And if you never perfect the skill part, you will still hugely benefit from the effort to find yourself and find meaning in it. And a lot of what I think has been really beneficial for me in writing is like I pick the thing I want to write about, the thing that I have an idea about that I want to bring into the world. And the idea that like this needs to be the best finished version of this possible forces me to let go of the parts that are like unimportant or boring or a distraction from the main point. It really helps me categorize my own thinking around whatever topic it is I'm trying to bring to life. And everybody needs that. Everybody has that. And I think that's the part that most writers who have done it long enough find most compelling. You can't control whether people like the end product. You can do things to make it more appealing to the masses or, you know, more uh more of something for a niche crowd. You can target your messages, but the part that seems universal is that you have to make the choices about your own internal stance on what it is you're trying to deliver, and that helps sharpen you as an individual.
Yeah, and let me give you a circuit. Let me give you an example of a situation, and then because what I think it can do is like what you just kind of gave was the principle, the philosophy behind it. Now let me give you a practical, pragmatic example of it taking place in real time for somebody. It happened with me, and then like
Mhm.
what would be your recommendation to maybe a prospective author, somebody who maybe has attempted to try to write like I did? And so I was in a hospital waiting room waiting, and so I thought to myself, I had a significant failure in leadership when I was in the military, and it was a experience that I thought about, and I thought to myself, "I want to write about this more than anything because I believe that by doing it, you can't erase what happened. It is what it is. I can learn from it. There's all the things associated with it." But the fact of the matter is I feel like doing this might help in terms of my
Mm.
ability to navigate it. I started writing about it, and after such a limited amount of time, it just felt like I have no idea what I'm even trying to do. I don't even know what
Mm.
I'm trying to say. I don't know how to continue on. It's almost like, hey, it's easy to write a few pages, but then the moment I try to take a step, I don't even begin to know what to do. How would you respond to somebody who's like done that and be like, hey, from a writer's perspective,
Yeah.
fill in the blank?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a couple things I'd recommend. The first one is really, I guess, maybe not obvious, but it's very simple, and I think is probably just the way to start, which is, when you write, particularly a nonfiction piece, when you're writing about something just simple or complex, just a thing that happened to you. Uh, what a story really is taking a memory and cutting out everything but the important parts, right? It's like you cut out everything that's not worth sharing. And so a lot of times when people try to do that, they realize, like, well, this actually isn't a long and complicated story. It's pretty simple, right? Uh, but it's kind of like revisiting a memory is kind of like walking into a room. You walk in there once or twice and you'll see some things. And if it's been a particularly painful or exciting memory, you probably have like highlights that you visit whenever it comes to mind. If it's a painful memory, you probably try not to spend too much time in that room. And what writing really forces you to do is to walk into that room, sit there, examine all the pieces of it, don't miss anything. You're looking for things that are significant. And typically, what is helpful to do is to walk into that room several times. So, the first thing I would do is like, hey, you wrote about it once. You should try writing about it again, you know, and just see how the repetition makes you better. You'll hear a lot of people, I think because it's like what we were taught in high school is like third draft, third and final draft.
Yeah,
Most of the writers I know and have listened to or read about, they're more like 10 to 20 draft type people. Like
interesting.
to the point that they don't even think of it as a draft anymore. Like, I'm just going to rewrite this thing until it's what I like, right? Until it all fits and makes sense in the right way. And so the first thing would just be visit it again, especially if writing's an unfamiliar muscle with you. You can't walk out the first day and run a marathon. You got to build. You,
That's so fascinating you say that, and I just want to caveat, like, I've always thought to myself that writers that are great writers, that they just write once, and then there it is. So, the fact that you're talking about, "Hey, no, it's 10 draft," like, that's very interesting from somebody who doesn't understand to hear. I would never have thought that.
well, and what I'll add is so Haruki Murakami is a Japanese novelist, and he's also famous. He's run like over 80 marathons. He writes my favorite book about running ever. It's called What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. I recommend it to anybody. Because it's his version of a memoir. And so all he talks about is writing and running, which yes, does make me his ideal audience, but it's universally beloved. It's short, it's easy, and you get a real look at, you know, uh a guy who is famous for his ability to just like produce work. And one thing he talks about maybe why he's attracted to marathons is the same reason he's attracted to running long distances, is that it takes a certain amount of mental endurance to sit in the chair for that long a time and just like you're isolated, you're working in your own brain, things aren't falling into place, it's not becoming what it is. And yet you know that this thing is important. It's the reason that the idea inside of you called out to be put outside of you, to be cultivated. And so just being able to hang in there and write it again is is to me easily number one on the list. Like, just don't let go of the rope, and you will find what matters most in here. And what I would probably add to that is, since I just kind of bashed the high school education format, is a lot of that stuff was great. There's a there's an author, Anna Macaulay. I went to high school with her. She was the smartest kid in our school. Well, it's debatable. It's debatable. But to me at the time, I thought she was the smartest kid in our school. And I still would probably put my money on her. But, you know, she went off to Harvard, got some great job with Palantir. And now, only now, she is releasing her first novel this coming summer. It's called Abby Offsides. Can already pre-order it on Amazon. Little rom-com. Everyone loves them. Highly recommend. It's going to be great. And it's going to be gangbusters. She's already got like a lot of great deals, a lot of positive momentum in the book world. She's just good at it. But to the point of what we're talking about, I knew a decade ago that she did a lot of writing and she'd never really published anything like a novel. So I reached out to her when I was writing Cheeto Dust, and like I told you, that first book of mine was a mess. And her advice to me was like, hey, honestly, the 3-act structure with a thesis statement, it's great advice. Like, take a pause and say, what are the 3 most important things about this experience for me? Get those down and like write why those are the 3 most important things and build the thing out slowly. What's important about this thing? Just write what was important about that. What's important about the second thing? Just write what's important about that. And then find the commonalities.
How does your
Hmm?
process when you do that, how does that process take shape for you? Is it an outline? Is it like the web thing? It's got a bunch of bubbles on it? Like, what does that look like for you?
I just use a blank page, Word doc. I use an app called Scrivener, actually, but it's the same deal, right? It's just, you know, black text on a white screen. And actually, I'm in power saving mode. White text, black screen. But like, I'll just, because I know it's not, I know it's all throwaway. It's just to get my brain organized, right? So like, even though when I was coming on this podcast, I was like, man, what are the important things about writing for me? I did that exact thing. I wrote the first thing, then I wrote the second thing, then I wrote the third thing, and then I wrote like a little paragraph about like, well, do I just like the sound of this being a good thing for me? Or is it actually like, why is it important? Like, and I wrote out, what do I mean by saying this is important? And then like, after I was done with it, like one wasn't that good. I was like, I don't actually think I believe in that. So like I tossed it. Right. So yeah, I just use that. Now, if the idea is bigger, right? Like for this novel I'm working on, which is going to be sizey. Uh, it probably just because I've got a lot of thoughts. I ramble too much. For me, I need to cut more. Like
Mhm.
you were talking about, like how do I like write more about this? I have the opposite problem these days. Like I need to get concise, focus on what matters. But
Which is the better problem to have from a writer's perspective? Does that just depend? Is it like having more or having less? Does it just depend on what you're writing or
yeah, you got what you have, man. You know, there isn't like there's a movie called Genius starring Jude Law, and he plays the author Thomas Wolfe, who's from the Asheville, North Carolina area. And the whole thing about him, like all his books are 1,000 pages, and people are just blown away by how much he has to say. And the movie is about his relationship with his editor, who is just always trying to get him to say less. He describes this girl's eyes for 2 pages. And after like a montage scene of arguing, he finally comes back to the editor. He's like, I figured it out. Her eyes were blue. And the editor's like, you did it. You crushed it. Right? So it's like you can kill your story either way. Like, but I think most people I think most writers would argue that they need to learn how to be more concise, more to the point. Uh, but the in that same movie, F. Scott Fitzgerald, uh, Great Gatsby writer, he's like a counterpoint. He works with the same editor, and he's always like, "I don't know how you make your books so long," and he's almost disgusted by it. And Thomas Wolfe looks at Fitzgerald and is just like, "This guy can't grind out any words. He doesn't got it. He's got no juice." Both great writers, both all-time greats, right? But for one, it was like pulling blood from a stone, and the other one, it was like holding back a river. And
That's so
it
fascinating.
doesn't really matter, man. It's like, would you rather be 7 foot or 6'4" to be a basketball player? It's like, well, it really depends on your skill set, Like
Mm.
that isn't what makes you good. So it's either way, you gotta work with what you have to get it right.
So more of the like you kind of hinted at an editor, and one of the things that I was curious to ask you about is because for me, this is obviously foreign to me from a process perspective. Say you come up with an idea, you go through the creative process, you write your book. What is it when people say an editor? What does that look like? Do you seek
Hmm.
somebody out? Is there like is it an individual person or is it like companies? Like what does that look like? And what I'm talking about specifically is like someone like the gal you referenced that you went to high school with yourself who are
Hmm.
actually authoring books. Like what does that process even look like?
Yeah, so it depends what level you're working at, right? So like in the story I talked about, Anna acted as a copy editor for me, which was just like going through, like cleaning up the grammar, making sure I didn't have like punctuation errors, things like that. Are you using the number three here, but writing out three, THRE over here? Consistency. So that's just a copy editor. And, Anna graciously came in as a little bit more of like an input full, full level editor and offering me some writing advice, which I'm very grateful for. Uh, But if you're working at like a higher level with like a publisher and an agent, like that editor is a stakeholder in the book. So
Okay.
they will offer ideas. Like there's somebody who they know books, they've read a lot of books, they know what makes them successful, what halts them, and then you work in as a team to decide like what needs to be in the book. And depending on who has more power in the relationship, those conversations go either way, right? It's not much different than when you hear a director like talk about how like he filmed a different ending, but the studio wouldn't let him use it, right? There's the possibility that an editor with enough power at a large enough publisher would just be like, "Look, we've got too much invested in this book. It can't be that way. Like it's not for us." So for me, having only ever written independently, like I don't have that kind of relationship. I I long for the day that I'm successful enough to earn such collaboration. But
Yeah.
it's so that's something you work up to, and it's a trade you may make to engage like a larger portion of the publishing enterprise. But I think most writers would tell you that editors are a friend in the process. Like I'm kind of painting a doomsday scenario there. I think most editors truly want to help an author's vision come to life in a way that is best. It's like not unlike having let's say let's since we've talked about marathon running or basketball, an editor's kind of like a coach. They're not out there doing the work, but they're there to give you like proper guidance from all they've learned from working with other writers, from understanding the way that things play out, like once you actually publish the book. And so they're just there to help you be the best version of yourself.
Okay. And is there when it comes is you've kind of hinted at it a couple times. Is there a writing takes so many you have historians writing books. You have people writing columns in newspapers, articles, things like that. You have sports writers. So is there technically like a writing industry, if that makes any sense, or is it just a skill that's applied across industries?
Primarily, it's a skill applied across all industries. So, have you ever seen the show Mad Men?
Yes. Mhm.
So, like Mad Men, so much of the emphasis was put around the copywriters that assisted the creative director. But like that writing was pivotal to the way the ads got formed. And I think particularly in today's age where social media has taken on such a heavy part of the advertising arm for corporations of all sorts, like writing has become essential to brands controlling their narrative, finding their audience, and growing into what they want to be. It's so it is primarily that. If you're just talking about the writing industry, I I don't think that really exists. Like there's a publishing industry,
Okay, that's
right?
okay. That's just my ignorance then. That makes a lot more
No, no,
sense.
no. And the publishing industry is its own thing, and particularly when you're talking about books, there's 5 main publishers, and they control the vast like you walk into a Barnes and Noble, like they're 90+% of the books you see in there.
That's so fascinating.
So
I had no idea. Is it possible for, like you said, like an independent author, like say I wrote a book the other day and I really like it. Is it possible for me to even get it published, or do you pretty much do those 5, like you're required to go through them pretty much if you want to quote unquote
oh,
publish a
no,
book?
you can so, like, for example, for me, one of the amazing things about the internet has been giving writers like me an ability to just get the book out and move on. You know, there might have been a time where I wrote Looks Like We're Running and then spent years trying to get someone to sell it. But Ingram Micro is the largest well, might just be Ingram. Sorry, some of my IT sales is crossing over, but Ingram is the world's largest uh, like book distributor. They do all the printing, gluing the edges together, and like shipping them out.
Okay.
So you can just write your own book, upload it to Ingram, set all the parameters around like your royalties, and they'll give you some guidance on like what you need to set for the money in order for like libraries to say, yeah, we'll take a few copies, or for it to be interesting to bookstores. Like, okay, I get enough cut off the top of this that yeah, I'll put one of these on my shelves. But most of it is just like are you known or not is what sells the book. Is there a demand for this thing? And so a lot of writers will make some compromises and say like I'm just going to write about a very specific topic. There's one writer I love, Matt Fitzgerald. He writes almost exclusively about running, and he's probably written 20 books on running, and they're all like some of it's focused on like the athlete's mindset, some of it is on like the 80-20 rule of running about like do 80% of it easy, 20% at intensity, but he'll write a whole book on the topic. And so he just focuses on that. And if you're somebody who's gotten serious about running and you wanted to learn about running, you'll come across him. And then if you like his books, my favorite one being The Iron War, which studies like a clash between the two original great Ironmen culminating in like just an epic battle in Hawaii at an Ironman race. If you like his books, like you start picking them all up, right? And now he's created his own audience on the back of an interest in a topic, even though, you know, he had no reason to be famous outside of that. So, like, the ability to just put your books out independently, it does create like some marketing possibilities and some you can get the book out there. It can be shipped directly to consumer, bought through sites like Amazon or Barnes and Noble or anywhere else books are sold online. And and that's been a great boon to people who just want to write. It is still, from what I can tell, fairly difficult to make it without the help as far as like this is my primary paying job. It is a very difficult road to travel just because like the effort that goes into book might be 6 months at a minimum of your life getting that thing done, and then you need to sell like 10,000 copies, right? And let's say you make $7 a copy, you sell 10, that's 70K. Like, okay, now you've got an annual income, right? So if you don't have a following and you're trying to like replace your annual income, it's tough to hoe as an independent author. But it the apparatus is there. I've done it. It is not that difficult. Just takes a little education and elbow grease.
Well, I appreciate yeah, I know that that's not a very I know that's kind of like a almost a bit of a dry thing to talk about, but I just think for people like myself and, for any listeners who just aren't familiar, like, those are questions that come to my mind. What's an editor? Like, is there a writing industry? It's like, no, but there's a publishing industry. Like, those things are all fascinating. One of the things that you touched on earlier that I'm really interested to pick your brain on is
Yeah.
it goes back to AI. I'm in my MBA right now, and as I've been going through one of the things that we do on a weekly basis, super simple. There's a topic that we have. It's a strategic leadership course. So but we go through and there's just a general leadership topic and people have to write on it. So what I've been doing is I've been taking people's responses or posts and I've been putting them in those AI detectors online just out of sheer curiosity. And every single one that I've put in, average 50 to 70% of every single one of them, there's AI involved in it. And so I'm seeing that play out right now and a little, don't call it higher education, but, master's level work. And I'm
Mhm.
seeing people, they're not even writing anymore. They're just doing AI and then they're inputting a few sentences to try to break the mold a little bit. And so I guess what do you see is the progression of how that could potentially influence not so much I mean, you could look at it from an industry perspective, like, hey, how long is it until sports writers, ESPN, instead of using a sports writer for what happened in the game
Mhm.
yesterday, they just have AI do, hey, here are all the stats, here's what happened, and then just boom. And then also you have just the creative process of people, just like losing
Yeah.
the ability to think creatively for themselves. Like, how do you see that something like that that is, progressing and growing is going to play out in the writing world?
Yeah, I think I've got two thoughts on this, and like, I, one I think is one only I've had, but I'll start with the other one. The the first one, well, I guess first let me answer the question directly. Like, it's gonna happen. Like, like it's just there's too much productivity at too low of a cost for us to, as a species, not to allow that to come into place. And you talk about things like a sports writer. That could be interesting and unique. Like, maybe the just like game summaries are now done by AI. But I do know that some people, probably most people, like they have a favorite sports person, a Bill Barnwell at ESPN, a Bill Simmons, a Nick Wright, like people they want to hear from on the topic. What does this person think about it? And I think it would be really hard to generate that same thing, even if you tried to like brand the AI, right? Like, you call it ESPY. And what does ESPY have to say about this? Like, people probably won't care about that as much. So it'll definitely absorb some of the more remedial writing jobs out there. I don't see how it can't. And for people who work in an industry where it's just like, well, I do write sometimes, like it's already happening. Like you know, I, I take pride in writing all my own emails, but most of my colleagues don't. Uh, so that part is on its way. And I guess my two thoughts on it are this. And the first one being like, this is a thought that I've had for years about AI. And I remember thinking of it first when I forget the name of it, but there was an AI created song that was real big on Spotify for like 2 days. And people were like, wow, that sounds pretty good. Like, I like this song. And, it quickly faded away. Can't even remember the fake band name they used for it. And my belief about people is this: we are very self absorbed, and not just like as individuals, but as a species. We tend to not really care that much about what non-humans are capable of. You know, it's like a little bit maybe, but like when we talk about like what's the fastest a car has ever gone, we look at that as a feat of engineering. It is a credit to the humans who built it.
That's fascinating.
And you know, when we think about our favorite singers, it's rarely because they're the best singer. It's because they are a human that sung to us at a time when it was important and it left an impression. And like the fact that I can pick out Dave Matthews or Bruce Springsteen's voice from anywhere, right? And it is unique. I think we as a species care about what other people can do, and this bleeds into other things like why we're offended when somebody uses you know, what do they call them, the enhancement drugs in sports. uh what is it, PEDs? Am I thinking of the right thing?
Yeah, yeah,
Performance
PEDs.
enhancing
Yeah.
drugs, that's
Mhm.
it, yeah. When and once we find out that it is done by a machine, right? It's like why do people still pay a lot for paintings when a photograph does it better? There is there's something in like the effort and the work and sometimes just the heritage. Like I know the story of how this came to be, that when a machine blinks that all away, we cease to be impressed. We cease to care because all we really know is what is it like to be a human.
Yeah.
And then when you see that a human has produced this, it tells you something about what we are capable of, what I am capable of. And so I think that the arts in general, that is the concept that insulates them from AI. Because once AI and machines can do everything better than humans, what we'll be left with is wondering what we're capable of. And that'll be left in art. And I think stories particularly carry that power because of the, you know what it is to be a human. And I have no doubt that there will be famous works written by AI, but I think for the most part, those will be novelties. And I'll be surprised if people consistently over time prefer the AI created work to the human created work. Uh, but, we'll see. We see a little bit of that in like things like watchmaking, right? Like a quartz watch keeps better time. Uh, a smartwatch has 1,000 more complications, but people still pay 10 grand for a Rolex. They like that it was the first watch that went up Everest, and they like that it is difficult to attain. And so I think that that'll be an interesting interplay that tells us a little bit about who we are as people and what we care about. And I don't think it's I think I don't think it's always convenience. In a lot of arenas it's convenience. But for the things that we what's the Robin Williams movie, Dead Poets Society,
Yeah.
where he talks about, what it is like, yes, these are things that allow you to live life, but this is what makes life worth living. And I think when you get to the life worth living portion, very rarely do people reference the benefits of AI. It's all the old school stuff, the connection to their humanity that they tend to reference, which is why I think art will be a hard thing for AI to overtake.
Yeah,
So
I
there's
love your
that.
yeah, it's such a you bring such a balanced view. Number 1, the Dead Poet Society, when they're all standing on the desk, "Oh, Captain Mike. Oh, Captain Mike." It's just
It's a great movie.
it's so good. But, actually, there was out by the Equestrian Center down at Asbury and just outside of Wilmore, there's that cave out there and that trail system. I don't know if you heard about that, but I knew a group of guys who went
Yeah,
out there and they lit these candles in there and they did the Dead Poet Society out there, Asbury's chapter.
Asbury style.
No, but the thing I love about what you just pointed out was that the cold cut business application of AI is not the future, it's the now. It's going to be the case,
Mhm.
and that's going to play out, especially from a competitive advantage. You just think about that from a business perspective. Obviously, it's going to have strategic implications. I was talking to a gentleman the other day who I did an interview for from a business perspective. He did a lot of work in executive level management across multiple different companies. And he just told me, he goes, AI is like anything else. It has the capacity to do great good and great bad.
Mhm.
And, he just talked about, um, a balanced view like you presented of don't get pulled away by the sensationalistic things that you see to try to get the most views of understanding. Hey, people are going to look at this when everybody talks about AI robots are about to take over the world. Everybody's going to watch that video just because it's intriguing and it's drawing. But your balanced view of understanding, there's that deeper element to the human that I think it oftentimes be missed and just not even considered. And I think number one, I want to acknowledge that because I haven't heard anybody address it in that way. And I think that that's really unique and I think it's really helpful. And also, number two, I just think it really helps bring the balance of understanding when you apply that logic, if that makes any sense from a
Well,
synopsis perspective of what you said.
it does make sense. And the thing I'll add to it is this is like speaking specifically of writing books, but I guess it's just like doesn't matter what it is, painting paintings, running marathons, like yeah, machines will be able to do all that better than us. And that's fine. The only thing that would really make machines like the AI being the only option, let's just stick with books, not overcomplicate it, would be if writers were to stop writing, if there wasn't a human option, And I don't think that that is even possible, just as somebody who's in the act, because what you learn when you start to write and really push through it to the point that you've created some things that you're like, man, I really said it correctly here. You realize that the thing you wrote was not actually the product. The product was always you. Like you are the product of your own art. And the effort that you put into it refined a way that you thought, it encapsulated a feeling you had, and you exit the exercise more complete than you were before. If if there's any sort of like puzzle to be solved in art. It's just the fragmented pieces of your own mind that like come rest to sit peacefully at rest in the place they're supposed to be when you've done the art correctly. It's like I had this in me, it needed to be solved, I got it. And then you're better for it. You've drawn the meaning out of the thing you were trying to figure.
Mhm.
And that's not gonna go away for people. We've got an itch inside of us to understand the things around us and ourselves that is inflamed by almost every experience we have. And and so, people will always be looking for an outlet. And there would have to be some sort of massive shift for writing not to be one of those outlets because, and this is one of the things I wanted to say about writing, writing is the most intentional form of thinking. And and the way I encapsulate that for people is this, like, we roughly think at a rate of about 1,000 words per minute. It's just like a storm of ideas that if we were to slow it down into speech, it comes out at about 100 words per minute. That's how fast we talk. Like that is just the way we have evolved to process information. Now, when you write, like, sure, we all took like Mavis Beacon, people our age did when we were little, and you would be like, oh, I can type 120 words per minute. It's like when you are blazing fast as a typist, like you get up to speech speeds. But what you find when you're writing is like the ideas and the way you're trying to process it, like they're too complex to fly out that way. And when you take all the time for like how long it took to draft it, how long did I pause in between all the writing, like what did I actually produce? Like I'm pretty thrilled when I can reach like I'm in a real flow state if I can get like 800 words an hour, which is, I don't know, do the math backwards, 25 words per minute ish. Right? So it's like I'm thinking at a quarter of the speed. And I'm not really. I'm thinking the same speed the whole time, but the finished product of me trying to nail this as best I can slows me all the way down.
That's so
And so
fascinating.
when you really take time to like write an idea, it is the most intentional way in which you can process your thoughts into a, yep, that's it, I got it. And so it's hard for me to see the practice of writing disappearing because like as long as we communicate in words, that will be a preferred method for people who want to solve the storm of their own mind, who want to calm that a little bit.
That's just awesome. I thank you. I took a ton away from that. I mean that with the utmost sincerity, and, what you just talked about how slow the mind gets when you're writing, and you said flow state at 25 words a minute, that really kinda set a light bulb off in my mind in terms of the intentionality of writing, so I just really appreciated that, so genuinely thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to give just the on the back end here, just open it up to any parting shots you may have from a writing perspective, but also, just kind of I didn't realize you had written a book about marathon running, and then also, is there anything that you can kind of hint at in terms of the novel that you're writing on right now, and just anything about your writing that you'd like to share for anybody who might have a listen or anything like that?
Well, I'll just say the novel is a sci-fi novel. It kind of takes from the things I mentioned before that I loved, fantasy and sci-fi type of stories, and it's not giving too much away. It's about a group of people who were digitally uploaded at the end of the world trying to find their way back to Earth and working through it's funny we're talking about AI. Working with and against the AI population that mostly rules that Earth. And so it ends up being, not the same in tone, but as far as like, well, what's going on here? It's a lot of the Game of Thronesy style groups jockeying for position and power and getting the things they want. But that's a general synopsis, and it's got a ways to go. But I really like my characters and I like where it's going. The I would say for anybody who's interested in the running book, Spotify is the way to go. It's on there. If you're a Spotify subscriber, you can sign up for it. You can listen to it for free on there. And I see a little piece of that royalty. I look forward to my little trickle of book royalties coming in every month. But the last thing I wanted to say, I guess, and just like a parting idea that was really helpful for me. Uh, so for listeners who aren't familiar, I was diagnosed with leukemia when I was 30. I went to rehab for alcohol addiction about 2 years after that. I'm 40 now. Had saw the first picture of my son, the little sonograph. Saw that the day my wife picked me up from rehab. Didn't, you know, still to this day, I think that in all its context is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And so a lot of my writing and the person I've become has come out of those experiences, but I think the thing that writing has taught me above all others is that we are the sum of the stories we tell ourselves. And our place in this world is determined by those stories we tell ourselves and others. And sometimes some of the stories we have in our past are painful and shameful. But it's important to remember that that's not the end of those stories. It's like you can start writing the rest of the story right now, and everyone loves a comeback story. And one of the things I like about writing, and the reason I write that letter to my kids every year, is it helps center me on the story I'm trying to tell them about life, about their father, but it also lets me tell a story to myself about who they are and what they mean to me. And taking the thing I just mentioned about writing being the most intentional form of thinking, if you do pick up a practice of writing in your life and you pick the things that matter, then you are applying the most intentional thought to the stories you tell yourself about the most important things to you. And for me, as somebody who's trying to create matter and meaning in my life, writing has been the most effective tool in doing so. And so I would just think about the stories you're telling yourself and think about the story you'd like to tell yourself and spend a little time working on that story. And like I told you earlier, John, like sometimes you got to walk back into that room several times to get it right. Like it is a multi-draft event, our lives.
Hmm.
And for me, writing has just been a joy for that reason. It has allowed me to encapsulate my life in a way that makes it significant to live.
Hmm.
So I guess that's the last thing I would like to say about writing. And if I was ever going to try to write a love letter to the craft, it would probably play off of that idea.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it's so cool to hear the stories going back to what I remember of you sitting at your desk in your room in college, typing, writing, and then to hear now, what, 20, what, 22, almost 20 years later, not too
Yeah.
shy of it. You know what I mean? To hear you kind of talk about that same thing that you were doing in that moment then, and how the sheer weight that that still carries in the now. And just knowing also just, your story, my story is along that line. And that's really special. And it's really been a pleasure to hear how you assign meaning to, something like writing. So the main thing is just gratitude. I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, and I'd say thanks for having me on. If you ever want to do it again, man, I mean, it probably is obvious from how I've treated this podcast. I can fill the space. happy, happy to chat it up. I really do enjoy it. And I'll say this: a lot of what I've just said about writing, it's true about podcasting. It's an intentional conversation about the things you're thinking about. And intention really is the difference maker. It helps you get everything clear and make the most out of those thoughts. It plots direction, it encapsulates ideas, and it kind of takes all that clay of your brain and puts it on the spinning wheel for you to work with. And so I think podcasting is a great way to learn and evolve and develop. I mean, look, there's a reason any of these very prevalent podcasters, the Dax Shepards, the Joe Rogans, like they don't need the money anymore,
Yeah,
right?
that's a great point.
But
Yeah.
they can feel themselves getting better as they do it by just like staying on the path, keep working the art, and growing from it. So I love what you're doing here, man, and I am honored to be a part of it.
You're the man. Dusty, thank you.
I appreciate you, John. Thanks so much.